So the last parable is one that many of us may be familiar with, but is significantly more detailed and really lays out kind of a societally, maybe not for our society, but especially for their society, societally one of the most rankest things that can occur. So he says there in verse 11, this is Jesus answering this question to them. And so in verse 11 it says, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, and he set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living." I love that English, wild living. "After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So when he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father, and I will say to him, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father." We'll stop there. So in this case, there's 2 sons and a father. Then there's some laborers, and they live on a farm. And so the youngest son comes to the father, and he says to him, "I want my portion of your estate." Now, even though this is old, right, this is not normal. It would be the same like today. If you had a will written out and you have a couple kids and you're still alive and kicking and you're full of your faculties, and your kid comes up to you and says, "I want everything that you were going to give me when you die. I would like that now." That's a little suspect, right? You might question a little bit, like, what's your motivation? Why do you want it? What's happening here? Why is that important to you? What do you value? Do you actually value me? Do you value what I can provide for you? A lot of questions will be brought up. So this is a very pompous request. Even it'd be as much of a pompous request today as it was back then. They're the same. Does that make sense? So this wasn't like some sort of Israeli tradition, and this guy's kind of taking advantage of it. That's not the deal at all. He's literally just going to his dad and saying, "You know what? You're not dead yet. I want what's mine. Please give it to me." Right? Very insulting, because the Hebrew culture was very much, and really the Middle Eastern culture in general, is very much built on an honor-shame dynamic, and you do not shame your parents. It's a huge, huge disgrace, not just for you, but it's a shame for like on down the family line, that like all these people weren't raised right because you did this thing. So he does this shameful thing to his father, and I think what his request is very common to human beings. Because think about where he's at. He lives on a good farm. We know later on, when we read later, we know that his father owns, he calls it the fatted calf. There's specifically a cow that's set aside for whatever feast or whatever party they're going to have. They're so rich they can set aside a cow specifically for a party, right? So that's pretty substantial. When we can just drive down to Sacramento and see like Harris Ranch or whatever, it doesn't seem like a big deal. Big deal. They're so rich, they can do that. He has laborers, right? So not only does his father have this farm, but it's big enough that he can hire laborers, and they are able to survive on the wage that he pays them. He's got a brother that also works there. So all that to say is, in this story, in this parable that Jesus is telling, there's this boy who has everything. He's not going for want. He's not having a terrible life. And we'll see in the end, it's a good father. This isn't a picture of some sort of bad dad that's, taking him out to the woodshed all the time or something like that. The issue here is this. He says, "Give me what is mine." It's interesting, right? Give me what's mine. Now, by Levitical law, when his father died, he was required to get some of that money. The eldest son got a double portion, and then it went split off from there. So he was, by Levitical law, entitled to a portion of that inheritance. In fact, the way the Levitical law worked, to keep land in the family, right, because they all live on an apportioned land that was given to them all the way back in Joshua, right? They inherit the land, they all get a piece. That boy would have gotten land, and he would have got what's on it. It was his by right. And it's the same to any daughter or so forth. It was theirs by right, okay? But he comes, and this is how so many problems in life start. For the person who has not believed in Jesus and for the person that's believed in Jesus. The context here is clearly people that have not believed in Jesus, that he goes after the people that have not believed. But it doesn't mean we can't take the concept and apply it to our own lives, and we'll talk from both sides on that. But in this statement, give me what's mine, give me what is my due, that is probably one of the most problematic attitudes and issues and causes the most difficulty in our lives. Where we look at something, we have something that's good, we have something that's okay, but there's something else, and we say, I want that. Give me that. Give me what's mine. And in a lot of ways, we've been given a lot by God. Even if we're not believers or anything like that. We have bodies, for one. We have minds. We have souls. We're able to enjoy things. We're able to create. Right? We're able to do all these things. We can do good. We can use our superpowers for good if you want, and we can use them for evil. So it's interesting that God has given all of us existence, and it doesn't have to be necessarily be a terrible one. And I'm not commenting to difficulties in life or something like that. Sin always makes life terrible, and we'll talk more about that. But the point is that we can insist on what God has given us. This is my body. It's my soul, it's my brain, and I'll do what I want with it. And the incredible thing is he lets us, doesn't he? And that's what this father does. This son says, give me what's mine. And the father doesn't say, hey, I'm not dead yet. Right? I'm not doing that for you. He gives it to him. He says, here's what's yours. You can have this. This is what your due would be if I were to die. Verse 13, it says, not long after that, the young son got together all that he had, and he set off for a distant country where he squandered his wealth in wild living. So this young man, and this is what we do. He gathers everything that he has, everything he can muster that belongs to him. And think about, this is a little bit disrespectful. He leaves the farm and he leaves the country. So think of the irony of that. Here's this boy who has essentially everything in his life has been given to him from this farm, from his father. And his response is to take that and then to leave the area that blessed him. Does that make sense? And he's saying there, this isn't enough for me. This doesn't bless me enough. This doesn't fulfill me enough. This doesn't give me everything that I want or something like that. And he believes something different. He believes that if I go somewhere else, if I get off this farm, if I go to another country, and we don't know where he went, and it's a parable. Jesus didn't say that this is an account of something that really happened. He's sharing a parable. It's a word lesson, right? So we don't know, did this guy go to Greek culture? Did he go to some other place in Palestine? Where did he go? We don't know. But what we do know is when he left, he spent it in I just like it says wild living, because I don't know, it just makes me snicker a little bit. It probably shouldn't. But the word there in the Greek, it's asotos. There you go. Let's move on. No, I'm just kidding. So asotos, the root word is sozo, where we get our word, like anytime you read the word salvation, to be saved, can be saved, should be saved in the Bible, it's sozo, it's salvation. So this is the same root word, it's asotos. So we have like our word atheist, meaning I do not believe in a God. That's an atheist, right? So an asotos is someone, you're doing things, it literally means like unredeemable stuff that no good can come from. Does that make sense? So when he goes and wild living is just more fun, but it's asotos. It's the idea that what he's engaged in is unredeemable. Now we know later on the brother describes it, and basically he spent it on rich foods and ladies. And that's where he spends all that money. But there again, that's us, right? So we're not picking on this guy. We're just talking about what this guy did. He decided that even though he had this place of security, this place of kindness, he had this incredible father, right? Maybe him and his brother don't get along very well because he seems to have beef later on when he comes back. But it wasn't, in his mind, enough. So in his mind, enough was basically to go out and have really tasty food and drink and have a lot of sex. That's the point of it. That's what he was all about. And it's funny because if you look at our society today, what are we about? Right? Tasty food and sex. That's like half of our advertisements. If you watch football, what are like all the advertisement? Food, drink, and sex. I mean, they don't like advertise, literal sex on there, but they might as well. They use sex to sell everything they're trying to. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And how many of us, in a moment of honesty, have believed that leaving behind the things of God, because they're lacking, we feel that they're lacking in our lives, that we can chase something else, and that's where we'll find the true fulfillment that we're looking for, right? Probably all of us, if I had to take a guess. All of us had. We're all constantly convinced that God just doesn't have enough for us, and that there's something over that hill. It doesn't have to be drink and sex. It can be anything. It could be land and money. It can be companionship. It can be whatever it might be. None of those things per se are bad in their context, but we're just convinced it just can't be where we're at. So that's what this guy's doing. The cool thing is about this, what is our context here? Our context isn't, hey, this guy's a loser. And Jesus is really just trying to point out there's a lot of losers out there. Now, we know that. We are losers. We know there's losers, right? The context here is what? This guy is accepted back by his father. Now, we'll get there. But the concept here isn't look how bad this guy is. The concept is look how good God is. The fact that he can be disrespected, taken from, that we can take everything that he's given us and we can use it for whatever we want to satisfy ourselves. That we can do all those things, and yet we're welcome back. So it's this parable being given to the Pharisees is that all sinners of any venue, whatever, every person has incredible value to God. You have value to God. Everyone you've ever met has value to God. And everyone who's ever been has had value to God. There has never been a human being that has lived on the planet, not Judas, not Saddam Hussein, not anyone who hasn't had value to God. He loves every single person. So the demonstration of who this guy is not, oh, look how terrible he is. Don't be like this guy. That may be a good application that we don't want to be like him. But the application is look how good God is.